Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the fourth edition of Let's Talk by Automatica. In this series of web talks, we explore topics for automation and robotics users worldwide. In our first edition back in July, we explored how the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated adoption of robotic and automation technologies in various industrial sectors. In subsequent editions of this talk, we discussed how the pandemic has influenced virtual commissioning of plants and processes, and also in the last outing, the role of interoperability and OPC UA. The results of all of these talks are available on the Automatica website, and I encourage you to go and look there if you're interested in these topics. Today, we'll zoom out a little bit and look at the macro factors affecting robotics and automation worldwide. After years of booming robotics sales, the COVID-19 induced economic slowdown has certainly impacted the robotics industry. But the medium to long-term prospects for increased robotics use around the world are bright. Both developed and emerging economies will continue upgrading their manufacturing sectors to achieve higher levels of quality and competitiveness. New products, many of them related to increased sustainability, rely on robotics to be manufactured. Indeed, the COVID-19 crisis itself is seen by many expert commentators as a booster for robotics and automation in the longer term. With the publishing of World Robotics today, we have definitive numbers and a qualitative outlook on many industrial sectors. And this is going to be what we'll focus in our discussion today. But before we get there, let me provide a little update on the Automatica trade fair. The rapidly rising infection rates in Germany and in Europe have made the staging of a big international trade fair in Munich unfeasible. Instead, the organizers have decided to run the next trade fair event as originally scheduled from June 21st to 24th in 2022. However, do not take the December dates out of your calendar. Messe Munich plans a digital version of the International Symposium on Robotics on December 9th and 10th. And on December 8th, I will host the executive roundtable with key managers from the top robotic companies here as part of this series of talks. So that's to look forward to in December. Then in early summer 2021, Automatica is planning a new event as an add-on to Automatica, which will feature a mix of face-to-face and digital formats. More details of this will be available shortly. My name is Ken Fuhi. I'm the editor-in-chief of VDI Nachrichten, which is Germany's biggest weekly newspaper and media outlet for engineering. Our parent organization is VDI, which is the German Association of Engineers. The newspaper has 140,000 copies each week, and our website, Ingenieur.de, has about 1 million user sessions every month. Our claim is that we are the journalistic home of engineering, and that's true, at least for German engineering. Let's come to today's topic. The global robotics market, where are we headed? In today's format, it will be interactive, so you have a possibility or three possibilities to give your opinion on various questions, and they'll be interspersed among our discussion. But you can also add questions for the panelists in the chat window, which you see on screen. Just write your questions in there and we'll pull them from the chat window and I'll give them to the participants as we go along. The three panelists today are Milton Guerry. Milton is the IFR president and he's also president of SCHUNK USA. Milton joined SCHUNK in 2000 and held several leadership positions before assuming his current role as president in 2007. Prior to joining SCHUNK, Milton began his career in the automotive industry in various engineering and technical roles. He is based in Raleigh-Durham, which is in North Carolina. Klaus König is IFR vice president. Klaus is also CEO of KUKA Deutschland. He's been in that position since July 2018. Prior to joining KUKA, he held various positions in the plastics processing equipment industry in Germany, Italy, and in Canada. He's a graduate of the RWTH in Aachen, the university in Aachen, and he's based in Augsburg in Germany. Marina Bill is the chair of the IFR Robot Suppliers Committee, and in her day job, she's global head of marketing and sales for the robotics and discrete automation business at ABB. She's been with ABB since 1997. She holds a Master of Science in Industrial Engineering and Management, specialized in a subject dear to my soul, applied thermodynamics, from the Royal Institute of Technology in Stockholm, Sweden. She's now based in Zurich in Switzerland. To start, Milton will explain the facts and figures behind the study, and then we'll get into the discussion. So Milton, over to you.
Ken, thank you very much for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. It's really great to be here today with Mrs. Bill and Herr König. Also, very special thanks to Messe München, VDMA, and VDE for bringing us all together. To frame the discussion, I'd like to start by sharing some figures, and I think that the slides are visible by you. I'm not sure. Can we see the, yes, awesome. Perfect, thank you. So start by kind of framing the discussion today and sharing some data coming out of World Robotics 2020. Next slide, please. So from a very high level, we're looking at World Robotics 2020, and we're looking at the 2019 data. And the highest number ever recorded of robots operating in factories around the world came to be in 2019 at 2.7 million units, and this is 12% year over year. Additionally, new robots, added to this operational stock was 373,000, just a bit lower in 2019 compared to the numbers in 2020. And if we're looking at the 5-year combined annual growth for both of these numbers, they're both healthily in the double digits. Next slide, please. So here you can see that this 373,000 was the third highest value in history, only bettered by 2017 and 2018, which were higher numbers of robots installed in factories around the globe. So what I'd like to draw your attention to is a bit further to the left side of this graph. If we look back to 2010, we can see that the annual installations tripled, and we're showing a full decade of growth, incredible growth. Next slide, please. So looking more into the regions, and now we're kind of seeing where all these robots are going. All three regions, both Asia, Europe, and Americas, showed a similar slowing or a similar decrease. So if you look at Asia and America, there was 13% less robots put into operation in 2019 compared to 2018. Europe fared just a bit better. You can see that in the red column there, with only 5% less year over year. But if we look back again in this 5-year trend, the combined annual growth for 5 years, all three regions are very healthy. Next slide, please. Drilling just one step deeper, now we're looking into country by country. We're kind of looking here at the top 15 countries. First off, China. You can see the numbers for China in 2019 were really incredible. China is right now accounting for 38% of all new robot installations, or they did in 2019. That's more than America and Europe combined. We look at Japan. Japan was down 10% from the record in 2018 of over 55,000 units. Japan continues to contribute 47% of the global robot supply. The United States was off just a bit more at 17% after exceeding 40,000 units in 2018. Germany fell 23% from the record of 27,000 units in 2018. Germany was in 2019 was back to kind of a stable condition that they've seen since 2011 at nearly flat numbers, only with 2019 exceeding those numbers significantly. Next slide, please. If we look closer and we go into the industries of where these robots are going, and I want to call your attention to the middle of this slide, many industries in 2019 were not feeling the same headwinds as the overall industry. So the metal and machinery, for example, was up slightly. Can't see it exactly in the numbers here, but they were up about 1%. Plastics and chemical was a bit flat, maybe slightly down. Food was holding a bit steady in its normal ways. But if we look more towards the top, and this is where most of the robots go in the world, we're looking at automotive and electronics. The two leading industries for robotics both had significant decreases in installations. Automotive still accounts for 28.2 of the total installations of robots and was down 16% year over year. And this loss and this change year over year, together with what's happened in years prior, has brought that combined annual growth down to only 2% for the last 5 years. Electronics, accounting for 23%, in excess of 23%, was down 17% year over year, but still marks a healthy combined annual growth over the last 5 years. The global production of cars and commercial vehicles was down 1% in 2018 and down another 5.2% in 2019. Certainly part of the contributor, one of the major contributors to these losses. And the global semiconductor revenue was down by 12%. Next slide, please. So here we can see the collaborative and traditional robots going into this 373,000. And these collaborative robots, this red section, may look today like a very small part of the robot industry, but it's a part that is growing. And if we look at these numbers and we look at the growth of market share, this is a significant number. You know, it doesn't look like 16,000 to 18,000 year over year is so much, but that's a share increase of 26% of the whole market, of the whole robot market. So when we look at that, they were growing 11% year over year, but the market share has grown from 2% to 3.8, reaching 4.8% in 2019. Next slide, please. So here we can see where that record number comes from, that 12% plus of operational stock. And the combined annual growth here is also from, the last 5 years is in excess of 13%. And you can see where when we talked about going back and that tripling of robots being installed over 10 years, you can see that's a nice, steady, firm growth. Next slide, please. Here's a story of the future a bit. So now we're talking about robot density, and you're looking far to the left, I'm sure, and you can see that both Singapore and the Republic of Korea have incredible robot densities. And you're coming down and everybody's, I'm sure, finding their own country and where it comes in robot density. But you can see that the average, the world average, is around 113. And there's many countries under that, including, the US sitting at sitting at number 9, and China sitting at number 15. So this chart is showing a huge potential of the robotics industry. It shows where the adoption of robotics is very solid and is becoming more developed, and also where the potential sits. And if we look at the world as a whole, I think this shows what the potential is for robot adoption around the globe. Next slide, please. So all of the numbers you just saw are from World Robotics 2020. And it's a very comprehensive 605-page report, thanks to the IFR Statistical Department. And if you're looking for that report, you want to dig in and see these numbers in a much more granular level, you can find more information at ifr.org, and you can also find out a way to get that report and order it for yourself. Thanks again.
Thank you, Milton. Thank you. Well, I've got many questions on what you presented, and we'll get into that with the panel in a couple of seconds. But I want to bring the audience in at this time. We've prepared a couple of questions for the audience. The first question is only for automation suppliers, and you can see it on screen now. So please only fill this out if you're an automation supplier. Do you record growing income orders at this time? Yes, significantly. We just reached a turning point. Or no, we still do not monitor any signs of recovery. So give us your opinion there. The people in the background will collate them, and you'll see the answers in a couple of seconds. Oh, we have just reached a turning point. Hey, the optimists are in the ascendant. I'm very glad to hear that. That's great. Now, for automation users, just automation users now, do you plan concrete major investments in robotics and automation already in 2020? No, in 2021, it'll be the first time we'll have a big upswing, or we plan major investments more in 2022? This is the other side of the previous question. And the results. So the suppliers are obviously a little bit more optimistic than the customers. We see that the uptick is going to come in 2022, which isn't a bad thing. We've got something to look forward to. If the people are saying it's going up already now, then it's going to boom again in 2022. I hope so anyhow. Okay, then we'll have another question for you later on in the panel. But now let's move to the discussion with my panelists. You can ask questions in the discussion as well. Like I mentioned earlier, just write them in the chat window and we'll deal with them as we go along. The first set of questions that we'll have will be about the short-term outlook, building on what Milton just provided for us here. But if we look at what is already shown on the figures for 2019, we already saw a downturn in the robotic and automation field. What's your forecast for 2020, Milton? What's going to happen?
So, Ken, that's a great question, and I think we just got some awesome feedback from the audience. So you can see the optimism in the suppliers, and I think there's good reason for that, because of course, you know, we're as suppliers, we're feeling that 27% that are looking to 2021. So in that respect, that's, you know, I think that's completely understandable how they're coming across, but that even shows a brighter 2022. But if we look back, you know, we just talked about 2019 numbers, and we talked a little bit about the headwinds that we were already seeing prior to 2020. And these headwinds were brought on by trade tensions and maybe just some normal cyclical happenings. But then we came into 2020 and we really hit with the pandemic. We hit a full-on economic storm. And, you know, around the world, factories were closed for periods of time to keep people safe. I think that we can say that this was never experienced before, you know, and even with that, you know, even with the headwinds that we were experiencing and this pandemic coming on, certainly some industries were faring better than others. And then robotics had the opportunity in 2020 already to kind of step up and add to the needs around the world. So, you know, they're bringing on help and assistance in social distancing, especially in electronics factories, for example. And also, you know, robotics and automation stepped up to the demand of more PPE and other, you know, things and needs in the healthcare industries. So I think that we can see that what robots bring, and that certainly was felt in the pandemic of 2020, but that's not going to compensate for the hard-hit industries. So in 2020, in the short-term outlook, I think we can expect a major contraction in our industry, but I think the fundamentals remain quite stable.
Yeah, obviously the questions we asked to the audience would underscore that, but you know, I'm a journalist, so you're not going to get off that easy. Can you give us an idea of what we're looking at for 2020 in terms of numbers, rough ideas?
Yeah, I think it's hard to have a crystal ball, but you know, there's no doubt we need to eventually put a tag on this thing and say what we expect. And you know, just looking at our own business and what's happening around the world, there's many areas that are already showing some recovery. And I think we can see, you know, falling back maybe to 2015 levels, you know, something in that range, and that's going to be in the excess of 15% and maybe as much as 20 to 25%, you know, changes year over year.
Okay, and let's move on the upswing side of that then. If we look at what we saw there in the two questions, the suppliers saying they see some recovery already, and the users are saying in probably 2021 and definitely in 2022 there's going to be a big upswing. So when do you really expect recovery, and can you compare the downswing and this V shape that was in the economy in the crash, the financial crisis of 2009? Will that be similar this time? What are you seeing? What's your expectation?
Well, for sure, you're a journalist pushing right on to 2021, so thanks for that. Yeah, so we're peering into the future, right? We're totally looking to 2021 and beyond and trying to figure out what's going to happen. And for sure, we saw incredible recoveries in the past with other large economic events, 2009. We also know that the fundamental case for robotics and automation and even technology adoption, the fundamental case is there. It was there prior to this. We saw this rise coming over the last 10 years up to the peak of 2018. We met some headwinds in 2019 for sure, but we know that robots make production resilient. It also brings in competitiveness for companies and allows them to produce where they want to produce. It's also getting the attention of governments and policymakers for reshoring, nearshoring, supply chain diversification. So governments are going to take note, and investments are going to be encouraged and hopefully stimulated through programs that will help our industry. So I think there's no way to tell exactly where we sit. We will see recovery in 2021, shown by the poll again. I think that's a good indication. But I think it could be 2022 and even into 2023 before we reach those 2018 levels and are ready to kind of break out of that all-time high of 2018.
Klaus, if I can ask you, this V-shaped recovery that we saw in 2009 to 2011 in Germany, and particularly in Germany, but also in Europe and worldwide. Do you see something similar coming? There's been a lot of talk in Germany in the last few weeks about that. How do you see that?
Yeah, first of all, also very warm welcome from my side, and thanks for the question. I would like to see that, but if I put some realistic sense to it, then it will not be the same V-shaped recovery as we saw after the financial crisis. Financial crisis, everything happened in synchronicity. It did not happen this time with the COVID crisis. So we saw a staggered approach starting in China, moving over to Europe, and reaching then America. And you see in some industries, some countries, some regions already a recovery, but it's not happening at the same time. So therefore, being realistic, we will see more swoosh-shaped recovery, which so a V with a longer leg on the right side, so that most probably then in 2022 we will see really full recovery of what we see here. So it will be a staggered approach, a little bit slower than hoped for.
A kind of a penman shaped V, but can we drill down on that a second? A big part of the recovery 2009 to 11 was that there was a big increase in demand, particularly for mechanical engineering side, coming from China, which really spun up the orders for countries like Germany. That played a big role in the recovery last time. And if you look now, I tend to be a little bit more optimistic here, because you can see that China is already coming out of this quicker than we are, or at least it looks that way to me from here. Does that give you a reason for hope?
Yes, I absolutely. So that's the signals we see in our market. So in the second quarter, already China started the recovery in certain industries. We saw the first good signs in automotive in China already happening at the end of the second quarter. So yeah, you're absolutely right. China is the biggest growing market on robotics, and it started as the first with the early recovery. Yeah.
And coming back to what Milton showed on the statistics, the the density of robots in the different regions, do you expect changes in that there will be relative changes, or will everybody come up generally in that side? You know, if you look at Singapore, there were close to 1,000, I think, if I have that in my head right, and Germany and Japan, who are pretty robot intensive in industry, were like mid 300s. Can Germany and Japan get to 900?
So I guess we plan and expect both. Yeah. So the one is there will be a faster recovery on those countries and areas where you have a lower density than in the already very mature industries. So there will be a fast catch up. On the same side, we do expect also a growth in new industry segments, which we didn't see the automation or robotic-based automation in the past. Yeah? So we see a growth maybe in small and medium-sized enterprises. We will see also new areas like also based on COVID experiences, like in pharmaceutical industries. On the farming side, agriculture side, we see for sure modifications. We do also expect much more automation in the warehousing, in the logistics side, not only on the warehouse logistics, but also on the intra-logistics side, also for already mature countries and mature industries.
Okay. What about Milton or Marina? Do you agree with this prognosis? Any further input on this topic before we move on?
So I think I'd like to add, I think Klaus is right, and I believe that this recovery coming across the different areas or different regions is going to be a bit different. And like you mentioned, it's already being felt and seen a little bit in China. And so it could be this swoosh. Let's hope this tail end or this other side of the V is as steep as it possibly can be. You know, China was coming a whole lot quicker. The US maybe didn't fall quite down as far as some areas, and I think Europe maybe is, you know, feeling a little bit of the bottom for a longer period of time. So I agree with everything Klaus said.
Here's Marina also. Hi everybody. See if you can both see and hear me now. So I think the whole part of business continuity, I mean, that has shown now in the COVID how extremely important it is with having mission critical production, no matter what happens, being up. I think that's also underlying the trends that both that was addressed earlier here. So yeah, I think it's an important additional factor to it.
Up to now, we've been talking mainly about industrial robots. How's the market development in service robots? This has been an area that's been talked about for years, but the real boom I haven't seen yet.
Well, maybe I'll start there, Mr. Fui. You know, the thing is, I think definitely we've been talking about the mixed results of industrial robots, and they are mixed. But when we look to service, you know, service robots have stepped up in the pandemic, and they already were stepping up before. So we know it's a very dynamic market, a lot of startups and a lot of excitement in the service robotics area, especially in the mobile robots area. So in 2019, they experienced growth of 32%. So 173,000 service robots were installed in 2019. So that's really quite a kind of a different story than what we've been talking about here. And also we're expecting a very robust growth, you know, through 2020, as much as another 35 to 40% is expected for 2020. But the thing we have to look at is that, you know, all this success, you know, when we put these two together, there's a lot of success in the robotic market. So the lines are starting to blur between these two. So Klaus mentioned the food industry. You know, sometimes where do you categorize the food industry? And Marina mentioned other industries that are coming and starting to adopt robotics. So deploying mobile robots or industrial robots in hospitality or food preparation, I think that's going to continue, and it's also going to continue to support the service robotics growth and in some way start blurring the lines again between these two groups.
And
I think also the whole digitalization will support this also, the digitalization trend that we're seeing coming up so strongly also, especially into non-industry segments and to SMEs.
I obviously stand corrected with 173,000 robots in this sector. Don't want to be accused of putting out fake news here. Where has that growth occurred strongest? What areas? Is it like geriatric care, or is it the mixed applications that you talked about?
So, you know, Ken, I'm not the absolute expert on this number, but I think logistics is where you're going to find most of these things happening. I think you're going to find a lot in logistics, and then this additional 38%. You know, I think we all saw all of the social media about cleaning public spaces. So these mobile platforms, you know, especially where the public space is controlled in the evening or in off-peak hours, these things are ideal for these kind of applications. But when we look to this 38% that we're projecting in 2020, and then maybe we look beyond and we say that the future is so bright for these service robots, also we're going to see these mobile platforms becoming much more commonplace in factories serving other, let's say, more fixed assets, fixed robots. So this industry is really, in my opinion, and I think in most of the industry's opinions, in its infancy.
Okay. Just for the audience, if you do have questions, put them in the chat window, and we'll get the speakers here, the experts in the world robotics area, to answer your questions. So just write them into the window. But right now we're going to come to the next block, which is we're going to talk about mega trends. But before I start talking about mega trends with the audience, or with the panel, I'm going to ask the audience, which mega trend do you rate as the most important for robotics? So you'll see the question coming up on screen here. So is it the mega trend sustainability, digitalization, or the ease of use and ease of programming? Which mega trend is the most important in your opinion? And then we'll get into the talk with the panel and see what they think. Oh, that kind of, it surprises me and doesn't surprise me. Okay, so we'll talk about the mega, all three of these mega trends with the panel here. So if you blend in the cameras again, please. So what trends do you see in the robotics industries that have been accelerated or slowed down due to COVID-19? What has been the effect there?
I think the main issue is that the megatrends that we even saw before COVID, they haven't changed really. There's still the same trends we're seeing, but they're being very much, as you said, accelerated and accentuated, and maybe also being more understood for the society and the public for how important it is with automation. So I think we're still seeing the same mega trends with the individualized consumer and the mass customization that really requires a lot of flexibility. We're still having the aging population and the things to have a skilled workforce. We know in Europe now in 2030, 40% of the people will be over 65. Digitalization, and with everything with now 5G coming, more machine learning and so on, this is also something, it became so much clearer during COVID, being able to do remote commissioning, and I like using this. And then what I talked about also before, the whole security thing and the uncertainty, being able to work in a secure way for everybody, and also making sure that mission critical production can be kept up no matter what.
But I'm a little surprised. I think the preference here from the audience shows that we have a lot of experts on robotics here, because they say ease of use is the main thing here. I would have thought that for the society in general, that sustainability and digitalization would have come out higher. So I'm a little surprised, but I think that's indicative of the audience. We have participating today.
I think this goes hand in hand, but the ease of use and the flexibility, that's really kind of indirectly the way to achieve all of this and to support this challenge. So the ease of use is I don't think it's so surprising. I think it's an interesting sign, but I'm not so surprised though.
We had the last discussion round that we had here on the automatica talk was exactly on that topic, and I said in advance of the event today that we got more questions in that than in anything else. So if people want to look back and see about ease of use, look back at the last talk that we did. There are many megatrends driving the further adoption of robots. Before the first lockdown in March, Fridays for Future received massive attention by the media, but also by government. How does the robotics industry relate to this debate? Marina, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Sustainability came up not so high in the poll, Jos, but I think sustainability is not a future trend. It's here and now. And I think it's interesting to see how automation and robotics is contributing to the agenda sustainability, which is really top of the agenda for a large part. And I think we need to see robotics in its way making production more efficient as a way to contributing to less waste. Also, just taking a paint shop, ensure that with automizers that less paint can be used, safer for people working in there. We're seeing now also robots being able to help in recycling, with sorting garbage and so on. So I think we should see the whole concept, how it contributes to a more sustainable development in a lot of different and really hands-on examples.
Klaus, Milton?
So,
I think also if we look at the electrification on the manufacturing side, on the car manufacturing side, yeah. So a lot of new technologies for the automotive industries is only possible because we can use robotics and robotic automation. If it's battery which is produced, if we talk about photovoltaic applications, so these are the things which continue to be in the focus, and even more with a lot of the government. I think we will see also there robots really enabling sustainability solutions, maybe the primary energy consumption, where we see, I think, robots benefiting and giving a better manufacturing footprint, but on the other side, enabling also products which yesterday not had been possible. So I think, yeah, robots will see much more impact on sustainable solutions.
On the digitalization side of it, how do the Industry 4.0 concepts impact the robotics industry, and where are you seeing the most benefits for your customers today?
I think connected robots are the future of manufacturing. So connected assets, connected robots, part of the line, having the sensoric features, understanding the process of the customer, allowing him to really optimize the production, optimize the process, reduce scrap, improve cycle time, improve quality. These are the first thing. But then on the other side, the connected devices allows also with the simulation footprint, the right simulation software, to have also the layout simulation, the process simulation, and then also the real-time simulation while the process is running, really making the optimization in the digital twin. So having the ability to generate a digital twin will be much more advanced and faster and more receptive by our customers. I think that's a trend which we'll see. COVID is helping there, is accelerating, is opening the customers much more for remote services, which allows us to support on the customer service side, recovering the assets or even maintaining the assets. So I think at that stage, COVID-19 is helping, and digitalization for sure will take a major leap forward.
Just saw also the figures for cobots that Milton presented that shows robust growth. Apart from their ability to work hand in hand with humans without fences, their intuitive use is often said to be their major advantage. How is this important towards better usability? And then we're coming back to usability again now.
I think that was shown also by, your question to the audience, this ease of use. And I really like the way Mrs. Bill put that together in the stepwise, everything's heading towards the sustainability. And sustainability also should include competitiveness, because if we can do things closer to where they're needed, we're going to be closer to the customer and have less ships on the ocean and more sustainable all the way through. But coming back to your question about this ease of use, that's one of the barriers to entry for robotics, is that you can get these things down. I mean, let's look to how, connectivity has affected our own lives, and we can hit that from digital down back to where this question is. It used to be we would leave home and we wouldn't be connected back with home until the evening when we arrived home. But now we're all carrying smart devices in our pockets and we're connected throughout our entire ecosystem. So I think it's going to be the same for factories. There's going to be this connectedness, and then the ease of use of this connectedness coming right down to the robots, where, each and every person can handle what needs to be done at that particular process, and all connected and all leading towards sustainability.
And what the rise of cobots, what effects will that have on the labor force? Do you expect a negative trend in the labor force through the adoption of cobots, or will it be like in the past where more robots also means more jobs?
So I'm firmly in belief that more robots means more jobs. And I think that question needs to come up, because this is out in the public and there's this thought that robots are taking jobs, but it's just simply not the case. So we know that this competitiveness and sustainability and all the things that companies desire brings them, forward and allows them to hire more people, but these jobs are different. So we shouldn't also shy away from the fact that the jobs of the future, certainly some are here today, but many of them will be different. And if recent history has taught us anything, recent history is a long period good sustainable growth in manufacturing and good sustainable growth in robotics. That's what we've seen. We had that all the way up to 2018, and I don't believe I was anywhere where somebody wasn't talking about a lack of being able to find enough employees. And it's not always about, just the skill, because we really work with today in our companies and our customers, we are working with some of the most talented employees in the world. So they're here. But in manufacturing, we need more of them. So it's really, this skills gap is really about quantity. It's not always about quality, it's really about quantity. And so as companies are able to address this and bring these connected devices and ease of use robots, cobots, however we want to term them, we need to attract people, and we need to start very early.
But how can this happen? How can you make this happen?
And that's that's the hard thing, right? It's not easy, but it has to start very early. And in the school systems where we make manufacturing jobs and technical jobs cool. These aren't laborious jobs. These guys are technical experts. So that's cool, and we have to make sure we're telling people that. I know in our own area, it's a little hard sometimes to get attention because of this thought of what it used to be, but it's not what it is today. And as soon as people hit our factory floor here in North Carolina, you see their eyes open up. It's like, well, I didn't expect this at all. So it really is quite a bit different today than it was. So we have to start by attracting people towards manufacturing and towards robotics and towards technology. And then the other thing we have to do is we have to engage our policymakers, because we have to ensure that there's an educational infrastructure available that is fitting. And this curriculum and these early career and these career developments, no one knows this better than us, but no one can deliver it better than our institutions, and no one can actually support that better than our policymakers. So manufacturers, suppliers, we all live in this ecosystem, and we have to view this as we're in it together.
And I want to match what Milton says. It starts already in school. For sure, we have to deliver robots which are much easier to program, easier to operate, easier to recover. But in order to lower the entry barrier, that everybody is losing the fear to use robotic as an automation mean. But at the same time, we have to really start already in the school, in the universities, and the policymakers has to allow us really to access the talents early on. And maybe there are some areas where we will not have the same education system, same schooling system. So therefore, I think having there good digitalization, digital offerings, yeah, so that we really can pair lower education areas with higher experience areas and do it on a remote way in order to really qualify a lower skilled workforce in the right manner. That's key to success. So we have to have also the infrastructure, the right infrastructure to do the remote education offered by us robotics.
Where are the Marina, sorry.
No, I just say I think it's really important is that we look at universities, but it starts very, very early in the education part. And I know there's some countries like Finland who's starting kind of having this awareness being already in kindergarten, which is it's another way of it. So I think the earliness of having this awareness of it is really important to make it cool, really, as you say, and to make it interesting, and that it will continue also, this lifelong learning. That is also something also when you're out of school or if you worked a few years and so that you can continue to develop within it, that possibilities are really visible to people.
But you all operate worldwide. Where are the global benchmarks, the global best practices for early adoption, early education for robotics and automation? If you look internationally, there's like a comparative study for science and technology, and there are countries like Finland and South Korea and Singapore do well, but I'm sure that's, well, the correlation is probably pretty good to the number of robots and the industries as well. But is that really the answer? The best practices are in those countries?
So it's a little hard to speak from those countries from my side, but I can say that there's shining lights in the US. There's many, many really, really shining examples of engaging students very young, all the way through the technical careers or through engineering careers, and with a nice focus on technology and especially on robotics. I think in the US, though, I just need to go back to the fact that we need the more. And these institutions need to be connected in such a way that they're not reinventing the wheel for a curriculum, so that they can have something that's gluing them together and they can benefit from each other. But we're talking about, going back to Klaus's swoosh, and let's say that this, we're going to pass 2018 numbers, and we need to be ready with the workforce when we pass those numbers, that it's not changing the slope of that line.
Okay, I'm looking here in the window for, my window is a little bit small for the questions. Just 1 second, bear with me.
Maybe I can just comment there. I think the automation readiness is also a very interesting part, which came out a couple of years ago, where we have a lot of the companies who have high density of robotics also being very high on the automation readiness index here, which is taking education and governmental policies and the whole concept around it, not all of it. That's an interesting aspect to it also.
Let's take some of the, sorry, Klaus, go ahead.
No, I think it's not only the operating, but it's also the commission and installation, which we have to improve dramatically in order, if you really see that there's a race for talent, then we have to, not only on the operating side, but specifically on the installation commissioning side of the equipment, we have to support the system partners, the integrators, the entire ecosystem in order to really conquer the recovery 2021-2022.
Okay, let me take some of the questions that the audience has put up. Why do collaborative robots have relatively small market shares compared to industrial robots? Is it because of the risk assessment?
Well, we see 9/10 of even the collaborative robots behind. So the one portion is the ease to install and to qualify the application. So therefore, I think cobots are much easier to serve on that purpose. The second thing is the shared workspace is not always necessary. Sometimes it's in the industrial segment, it's about the milliseconds. So therefore, in order to run it with the highest speed, you need to have the application behind the fence. So in some of theirs, to qualify the application, Collaborative robots, great for the ease of installation, the ease of use, yeah, and then running behind the fence for the speed. But for sure, we will see also on the other industrial robots, on the 6-axis robots, a huge drive towards the ease of use, ease of installation on these robots too. So therefore,
an associated question to that: where will collaborative robot uses increase? Where do you expect the biggest growth or the fastest growth in the next while?
I think you will see in the hospital sector. You will see them also in the manufacturing sector, in automotive. Yeah. So if you look at the assembly operations, that's where shared workspaces will be used in order to have the material supply to the line, or even the operation within the line. So we see it in various industries.
I think we will see them also in all segments to a larger extent, but of course also it's very clear when we are seeing more newer segments coming in with retail, wholesale, logistics, healthcare, and so on. A lot of those also looks into the opportunities of all different types of robots to be used. I think we will see them in all segments.
There are lots of questions on cobots here. What's your opinion about cobots regarding factory automation in the future? Could they replace the industry robots in the future? I think they already are. But what's your opinion?
I personally don't think so. You know, so I think we're talking about additive technology, not replacing technology. And, you know, as Klaus mentioned, there's really a case quite often for faster movement, other things that may not qualify these in a risk assessment. But then there's so many, you know, when we talk about ease of use or shared workspaces and things like that, there's just so many new areas to put these collaborative robots. I don't think it's to take one robot out and put one in. I think it's all additive. I think it's an and condition.
Okay. I'll have to apologize in advance here. We have, looks like hundreds of questions. We won't be able to get to all of them today. Can a prediction be made on how Germany can remain competitive with China in the manufacturing industry in the future with the help of industrial robots based on growth statistics shown earlier? It's a bit of a minefield. Who wants to take that?
I'll let somebody else unpack that one.
Then, I think we leave that one to the journalists. You can read about it in VDI Nachrichten next week. To what extent is additive manufacturing being used to optimize robots to be more sustainable? That's an interesting question. Are you moving towards additive in the manufacturing area yourselves?
I think it can play on two sides. You know, one, it's a great market for robots to load or unload these machines. This again is a machine unloading situation. But if we look to how can it support the adoption of robots, is that there are things that are very specialized in the implementation or in the putting a robot into operation. So additive manufacturing, in the case of us, gripper fingers, for example, if we can bring those gripper fingers to the customer much quicker, that's one of those other things that adds to this ease of programming, right? Ease of programming is one piece of a very large puzzle to getting something in operation. And the other thing is getting all the componentry connected and all the digitalization that we talked about, and then all these things. But there's also quite often specialized components. So additive manufacturing brings that speed into the market.
And I'll take one more question from the list here. Old robot types were used for over 30 years. Can we use new technologies to keep the robots and their controllers in production for 30 years with just software updates? I'm sure that's not in a lot of your interest, but go ahead.
So I think it's always good to have a good mechatronic system as the base for reliable, safe, and high quality products which the customers are looking for. For sure, it's great to have technology leadership. At the end of the day, it has to serve the purpose. So I think even in the future, we'll see still electrical drives, and we'll see still some casting parts on robotics.
And I think a good service this concept always kind of safeguards your investment or whatever. So having the thought of service and how to do service, and also now with the digital means to do proactive service and so on, plays a vital role here. And I think we'll see even more of that in the future. This kind of lifelong looking upon an investment or service will be even more important.
Okay, let me ask you all a final question before we come to the wrap up. And please keep your answer to this short. From your perspective, which is the most important trend in the coming years that will impact the further adoption of robotics, and how do you rate the long-term perspective?
Well, I think the of use will be a predominant factor in order to be successful, paired with digitalization and focusing in various industry segments to come. So I see a bright future of robotized automation.
So you've gone with the majority opinion for our audience. Marina?
I think it's this ease of use as in simplification, you know, in the general part, to making things simpler, ease of use, and the whole concept, and together with that, a collaborative way of working.
Thank you. Milton?
So for sure, I won't leave out the ease of use. That's, you know, a consensus here. So ease of use is going to play a big part, and it's going to be one of the larger pieces of the puzzle. But the education system and the available workforce, you know, taking this talent that we talked about that we have today, that our industry is so rich and full of, and making sure we have more of them. And, you know, ease of use will play a large part of that, but also, you know, everything down to critical thinking. You know, the way a robot goes about a process in its nature is going to be, you know, to be able to think in that way, to make a you know, critically think about how this process can be made reliable together with this ease of use or connectivity is going to be important.
Yeah, one of the future topics we're going to take up will be the use of artificial intelligence in this whole area, but that's a talk for another day. Thank you all for participating today. It was dramatically interesting. And I'm sorry for all of the questions that we did not answer, but we'll push them over to all of the panelists today, and maybe they can pick up some of your answers and get in contact with you. Thank you also to the organizers from Messe Munich and to VDMA. You've done a great job as always, and our next edition will be on December 8th. Stay safe until then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.